Hello, everyone. This is NWE War Reports here with the 20th of April 2023 Frontline update for the Russo Ukrainian War. We have a lot to go through today. A lot of big events are happening on the battlefield and inside of Ukraine. First, we're going to talk about a developing situation in Bakhmut where one of the two remaining supply roads might have been cut off by Russian forces. So, very big development there. We're also going to go over the newest gains that Russian troops have made inside of the town of Bakhmut. I have a quick update for the Ukrainian Leopard 2 tank for you guys, as well as information on a new U.S. aid package. In terms of spring counteroffensives, there's some big news here. We have Ukrainian attacks are picking up all over the front line in some very strange places. So we're going to go through that with the general frontline update. So without further ado, we're going to start in the area of Bakhmut. And this information comes primarily from Syriac maps in terms of the mapping, but there's several other sources that are reporting on this information here. But Russians have launched an assault on the 0506 highway leading from Chasiv Yar to Romova. So this area here, it is the northern supply route for the Ukrainians. They have launched this assault in through these fields right here. Managed to capture essentially all this ground right here leading right up to the roadway. So a big chunk of territory just like this, not quite crossing the roadway, but rendering it completely incapacitated. So let me go ahead and mark this for you. That way we can move the map around and show you guys like essentially what I'm talking about here. But it's like switching into a 3D view. You'll actually see that Bakhmut, well, looking at it straight on from a Bakhmut view, right? There's two hilltops that are protecting the flanks of Bakhmut right now. One of those hilltops is over here, this hilltop, and the other one is right down through here. This is where Ukrainian troops are holding the line and holding the throat open for Bakhmut right now. So zooming in on this 0506 highway, you can see why this is a big deal for Russia to advance right here, as it renders this section of the highway right here completely useless. So if Ukrainian troops want to go this way, they have to say turn off the road further back and go down through the muddy fields, which is hardly a good option right now, or they have to use the other road to get into Bakhmut. This is a very, very bad development for the Ukrainians, and it could speed up the collapse of Bakhmut. Now, talking about Bakhmut in general, there's a lot going on in town. There's several areas of the town that have fallen into Russian hands, including some Western news media we're going to talk about that's kind of finally acknowledging some of this and acknowledging some of the how poor the situation is in Bakhmut. A lot of the things that we've talked about previously in the last couple weeks, including an intensifying bombardment of the town, along with pretty strong advances made from the north and coming from the east by the Russians inside of Bakhmut. So first, real quick, talking about the gains that the Russians have made in this area here to the northern part of town. I think this is worth going over real quick because last time we went over this, I had marked some of this up. This isn't exactly the same markings that I had. I added onto that yesterday and adjusted it. So the Russians didn't necessarily take all of this at one time. In terms of the last 2 days, the first day, everything, I guess you could say, everything north of this was 2 days ago on the 18th. This is what the Russians captured, and then everything south of this is what they captured yesterday in Area 2. So, you know, sorry about that, guys. I wanted to make a video yesterday. There just wasn't enough collectively to go on to give you guys some good content. But this is 2 days worth of gains marked up here. The first day being above the dotted line, the second day being below the dotted line right here. So constant gains being made up there in the north. In the center of town, the Russians have managed to capture another area across the railroad. They made a pretty strong attack in this zone and moved up and captured a bunch of these high-rise buildings here. This is pretty notable because some of you guys might know who this is. Some of you probably don't, but there's a prominent military analyst and geopolitics guy. His name's Michael Kaufman. He visited Bakhmut, I think at the beginning of March, and he had posted this on Twitter and said that he actually stayed or visited a hotel that was right here in this section, and there is video out right now of the Russians attacking and bombarding that hotel and eventually, I guess, taking it over, because this is what the most recent claims are, is that the Russians have taken over an area somewhat like this in the center of town across the railroad tracks. Further to the south, this area is confirmed as being held by the Russians. Not only that, but the Russians have managed to stabilize on the railroad tracks in the south as well. So you're looking at a territory like this that has been captured by the Russians as well. So overall situation in Bakhmut is deteriorating. You're starting to get a lot of Western sources that are confirming that and saying a lot of the same things that we've been saying here on this show. I did the research for this topic on Ground News, the world's first news comparison app and website. Honestly, I love Ground News. It has been my primary source for news media throughout the entire Ukraine war crisis. I particularly like Ground News because they don't publish or censor any news, and it allows me to compare headlines across thousands of sources, seek out political bias, and determine if there is any special interest behind a particular story. Let's take a look at the topic of Bakhmut. Ground News has compounded 45 sources, and there is a political distribution of these sources that leans 40% to the center, meaning the coverage of Bakhmut for this story has been fairly balanced. I have the option to sort the articles between left, center, and right, depending on my preference, and it is also a great way to see if there's any political spin in the headlines. Notice this strange quip that is being repeated in most left-leaning headlines, while right-leaning outlets have reported the situation similar to myself, suggesting Ukrainian retreat and withdrawal, words that are being avoided by the liberal news outlets. We can also determine the ownership of the outlets covering a particular story in the app and website. This is a great way to follow the money. Additional features include a factuality rating that is based on the reliability of the source rather than hollow attempts other outlets make to, quote, fact check individual articles. Finally, my favorite feature is Blind Spot. I could have won so many arguments with this in college. Blind Spot allows you to see which topics are being completely ignored due to political bias. Look at this. Surprise, surprise, conservative news is underreporting a story about potential corruption for a conservative Supreme Court justice. How can you ignore such a story? And this, a story about a former Twitter management giving the government full access to people's private messages. It's being completely ignored by liberal media. This is pure insanity. Everyone should be aware of both of these stories. Ground News is a great platform to help identify and overcome biased news. Upgrade to a more modern way to read the news by visiting ground.news/NWE, where you can sign up for free or before April 24th and get 30% off on the Advantage subscription, where you can get full access to all the features I find especially useful. By visiting Ground News, you will also support this channel. Thank you to Ground News for sponsoring this video. So back to the Frontline reports, or more or less, we're going to talk about some of the other events that's going on behind the scenes. If you'll remember, in the last video we talked about the Leopard 2 tank the Ukrainians had lost. Some more information on that has come out. A Polish soldier released a video, which on its own wouldn't be enough, I think, but I also had some people responded to me on Twitter, giving me some information and giving me some feedback that, made quite a bit of sense. And I know you guys are thinking, what is a random Twitter source? What does that mean? Like that's not good information, but I think this is worth saying. But apparently, saying that the Ukrainian tank was damaged by catching its turret on another tank and ripping that turret off isn't accurate and is probably not possible. And considering that that is the information that had come with the original images, there's not uh, a high bit of confidence behind that information anyways. What some people are suggesting and what this Polish soldier is suggesting is that two tanks actually collided, and it's likely that one tank ran up on the other tank, and that's what ended up running or tearing this turret off. So a little bit of a correction there, a different situation. I think it makes a lot of sense. The way someone described it to me on Twitter was basically, a possibility for what happened was there was two tanks in a row. One of the tanks started backing up without realizing the other tank was behind him. Tanks have a lot of traction. It ran up on top of the other tank, ripped the turret off. That kind of force is much more likely to dislodge a turret, rather than just the barrel hitting another tank. They're saying the barrel likely would just break in those situations and snap off. That's what people are saying. Now, talking about this new U.S. aid package, there's recently been information that the United States is donating another $325 million aid package to Ukraine. I don't usually go over these, but it's worth looking at just because of the news of or the potential of Ukrainian spring offensive coming up. So, included in this package are HIMARS rockets, artillery rounds, tow missiles, anti-tank systems, anti-tank mines, blah, blah, blah. Let's try to get down through here. Logistics support vehicles, testing and diagnostic equipment, and support vehicle maintenance and repair, port and harbor security equipment, spare parts, and other field equipment. So, this is probably most of this equipment is going to be used by the Ukrainians for the counteroffensive. And actually, this is the one I was looking for. I completely read over it. But demolition munitions for obstacle clearing. This is one of the big ones we've started seeing from what I guess is training grounds, either inside of Ukraine or in Poland. But the Ukrainians have been given mine clearing charges and vehicles that basically they shoot out like a large rocket, and you'll probably see in the video right now. I'm going to edit the video in here, but they shoot out a large rocket that pulls behind it a lot of essentially like explosive charges that are tied together in like a long 100-meter rope, and it's supposed to clear an 8-meter wide and 100-meter long path through a minefield. It just launches this big rocket out and it explodes everything behind it. Honestly, they're pretty cool. This, along with some smaller mine clearing charges that have been sent to Ukraine. We also have images of those. So, I guess of Danish make or Dutch make. I'm not really sure. I'm sure it says here on the screen now. But they clear a path about 25 meters long. So definitely the type of equipment you'd expect the West to be giving Ukraine for a counterattack. And speaking of that counterattack, we're getting information of a ton of Ukrainian attacks, or, maybe ton is a little extreme, but a lot more Ukrainian attacks in a lot more places than what we're used to getting. And potentially, I believe there's opportunities for Ukraine to launch a counterattack in a direction we haven't really talked about. So we're going to get into that along with the frontline updates. So we're going to start with the Lugansk front and work our way down to the Zaporozhye front. So starting in the area of Chervano-Popivka, and part of this is a Ukrainian counterattack, and then part of it is also, I believe, map corrections. on part of Syriac maps, but we've gotten some information that the Ukrainians have been active in this area, and Syriac maps has confirmed that for us, saying that the Ukrainians do control an area in front of Chervona something like this. And I will try to correct this if it's wrong, but a very large chunk of territory over the past couple weeks, perhaps, or some of this might never have been in Russian hands. It's tough to say, but a large chunk of territory is in Ukrainian hands, and they are pretty close to the town of Chervona. And I think this definitely is worth talking about in terms of Ukrainian counterattack, considering what happened last year. The Ukrainians initially started by pumping the media full of news of attacking the Kherson region. Like, we're gonna go on the offensive, Kherson. You guys all remember this, right? So they started putting pressure on the Russians here, and in the beginning, that pressure wasn't really going very well, especially from what I was covering and what I was reading at the time. It seemed like Ukraine was taking some pretty heavy casualties. A lot of infantry was getting chewed up in the area. During that time, Russia transferred large reserves from the Kharkiv region to Kherson to help. So this took place over like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks at the time, and the current Russian front line was essentially like this. You guys remember? So once Russia transferred those reserves over to take care of what was going on over here in the Kherson region, that's when Ukraine sprung an attack on the Kharkiv region, recapturing all this territory that they have here. It was actually pretty masterful plan. So, I am skeptical of all of the public information coming out about Ukrainian counteroffensive. I think there's a good chance that a lot of this stuff is just propaganda or misdirection. I think we're getting a lot of discussion about a potential Ukrainian attack in the area of Zaporozhye, which is definitely an area that they want to concentrate on. But I think it's easily just as possible that Ukraine could pick up their counteroffensive in this area, trying to cut off the highway between Svatova and Severodonetsk. After launching other attacks in other places. I think, there's a pretty good chance of this as well. The Russians in this area do not have good infrastructure, probably suffer from supply issues the same as the Ukrainians do. There is a large grouping of Russian troops in this area, but they could easily be drawn out of there and transferred somewhere else. Imagine Russia hasn't really been doing a lot in these Crimea forests, despite the news reports we've been getting and the information that we have that this huge cluster of units is even here right now. If Ukraine decides to attack the Zaporozhye front, Russia's going to have to pull troops from somewhere to reinforce that. They have three options. They can either pull them from Avdiivka, Bakhmut, or Crimea. And if you ask me, it's going to be Crimea. So, these are the troops that are not really active working on attacks right now. So the Russians likely would pull them down to the Zaporozhye front, leaving Ukraine an opportunity to once again take the fight to the First Guards tank army, which has sustained a lot of damage since the beginning of the war. Probably not even a Guards army anymore. Potentially causing a big problem for Russia in this area. So, that's just a possibility. I'm not telling you that's what's happening, but it's worth considering. So, in terms of the assault actions for today, we have Ukrainian assault actions in the area of Chervona Popovka. We also have claims from the Ukrainian side of Russian attacks and assault actions in the Crimea forests. So in this area here. We also have claims of from the Russian side of Ukrainian attacks in the Crimea forest. So there is a bit of activity picking up in this area. Worth noting. We have a lot of claims of a developing situation around Sporne. Specifically, some sources are saying that Russian troops have entered Sporne. They've been launching attacks north of it. It's hard to confirm any of this, and I don't really have any video that I can geolocate to the area. So we're just going to say we have Russian assault actions in the area of Sporne. Sorry, I guess I labeled this one wrong here. This is supposed to be Ukrainian. All right, and that outside of Bakhmut, where obviously we have Russian assault actions. There's no other updates from the area of Bakhmut. I just started doing this, but I'm gonna get quick at it. I promise you guys. We also have a bit of information coming in from Avdiivka. We have claims of Russian assault actions to the north and south of town, and there is recent footage of captured Ukrainian defense lines in the area. There's Russian troops, investigating a Ukrainian trench. I'm not going to share that video because there is, dead bodies and stuff in the video. It's not YouTube appropriate, but there is also a video of a Russian news lady interviewing a soldier about it after the fact as well, which I'll probably put a little cutscene of that in here as well. So we have Russian assault actions both to the north and to the south. Specifically, they mention in the video of the newscaster that it's a forest belt that was captured, so it potentially could be in this area here, but I'm really not sure, so I'm not even going to try to speculate. There's sporadic forests pretty much everywhere in Ukraine. We also have some interesting general information from some Russian sources. It might be accurate, might not be. Seems like it could be accurate, but Russian sources are suggesting that Ukrainian formations have made assault attempts over the last 24 hours in various places along the entire line from Krasnogorovka to Kamenka, which is right here just north of Avdiivka. So in various places along the line in between these two arrows, Ukraine has launched assault actions. So we'll place a couple icons to represent that. And we have Russian assault actions in Marinka. There's actually some stuff, interesting things going on here. Apparently, Russian troops have taken control over this area right here. This is some kind of dentist's office and fire station. These high-rise buildings, which probably don't even exist anymore, so Russian troops are making some slight gains inside of Marinka. Along with that, we do have a confirmation that this zone right here is in fact in Russian control. So we are going to mark that, and we are going to adjust the new Russian gains here in the area. So Russian assault actions in Marinka. All right. And then finally, we have reports of Russian assault actions near Vuhledar, although I haven't really heard anything about this from the Russian side. This information does come from Ukrainian sources, and there are some Russian sources, and these are always the most fascinating ones because it could mean anything, but half the time I think this information is kind of BS. But there is some Russian sources claiming that Ukrainian sources are saying that Russian troops have made gains to the north of Konstantinivka and Marfapil, which are both towns on the way up to Guliapol. So I have not seen the Ukrainian source. I've seen the Russian source claiming that they're quoting the Ukrainian source. Now, um, I believe that sometimes both sides say this. They say that the other side is saying something, so it must be true when it's not actually happening. I don't really know. There might be Russian gains here, there might not be. Regardless, we are going to mark Russian assault actions in this area. All right, so zooming out to show you guys, to give you a picture of like what has really happened over the last 24 to 48 hours. The red icons are where the Russians have been potentially attacking and pushing. The blue icons are where the Ukrainians have been attacking. So, you know, maybe you can kind of build some kind of image in your head of which direction both sides are trying to go to, who's trying to capture what right now. I definitely think that it's very notable that Ukraine is starting to attack the Russians again in the area of Crimea, especially since at least Deep State UA and some other maps are showing that Russia does have a large presence in the area. So maybe perhaps that's not even true anymore. Maybe this map is no longer accurate and the Russians have moved these troops elsewhere. Who knows? All right, guys, that is it from me today. Right quick before the end, I do want to give out a special thanks to UTIZ4321 for a super chat that he made back in March that I actually missed. Sorry about that. Thank you for the super chat. And then to David Diermoir, which gave a super thanks on my video 2 days ago. I guess would have been on Tuesday. So thanks, David. Really appreciate the help. Really appreciate the support. Thanks you guys for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.